G'day guys, Joseph here. Welcome to another episode of a trip down memory lane. We're going to a good old fan favorite, being, well, you guys will recognize this one in a few seconds. You'll see we're going to go to Black Temple. So Black Temple being one of the final instances of the BC expansion with Summer Plateau being the final one, of course. Pardon me, guys, I had some caffeine in my system today. But we're going to go to Black Temple. So Black Temple, it's in the Burning Crusade. Basically, usually raids would either gather outside the Sanctum of Stars or even gather at the Altar of Shatter. Sometimes they even gathered all together in Black Temple. As, basically both, factions didn't really have a stronghold close to Black Temple. As you guys can see to the left down here, that's Shadow Moon Village, which is basically the Horde side of the area. And also there's the Alliance side being Wildhammer's stronghold, which is down here, as you can see it past here. And as you can see, not many of these not many of these factions have a close area to the to Black Temple, other than the Sanctum of Stars and Altar of Shatter. And if you guys don't know, those Altar of Shatter is for Aldor, and the Sanctum of Stars is for Scryer, and those are pretty much essentially introduced later. So as you see here, guys, it's basically that giant mountain here is where Gul'dan destroyed the elements to create a giant Felspire and thus corrupt the Black Temple, as you guys see here. So the Black Temple, well, is completely different to its counterpart in Caribou and WoD. So it's all dark, corrupted, mysterious. There's also the Warden's Cage down here as well. The Warden's Cage is very, very integral to get BT attuned. It's the start of the Black Temple Attunement Quest. So Black Temple Attunement Quest, you have to start there, and then eventually you have to get the Rage Winter Chills Phylactery to get into Black Temple, which is the first boss of Hyjal, and probably the easiest boss of Hyjal you're ever going to do. So, those are the things that you basically have to do to get Black Temple. To get Black Temple, you get a long quest line. You do have to do, I don't think you have to do Suffer of Damnation. I'm trying to think, do you have to do that or not for BT attunement? I think you do have to do Suffer of Damnation because you have to get into the Eye. So you have to do the Eye attunement, you have to do SSC attunement, and of course you have to do Magferrodon attunement as well. Otherwise, you could not get in, essentially, which, is absolutely abysmal. So you have to do all these attunements. I believe you have to act like a broken to go and kill Allah in Tempest Keep as one of the quests as well. And then you have to find Sia Dulu in Faframor Carafus area in SSC. And you also have to find a Sia in Arcatraz. So it's like multiple areas where you had to find broken members for BT attunement. And then last but not least, you took to this Shah here and Maeve and basically beguard you and enter through here. And then after you complete that quest, you're BT attuned. So Black Temple was a very, very long chain, incredibly long chain to get attuned to. But it was made easy, I think, towards the end of the expansion where you didn't have to be attuned to enter Black Temple or Hyjal. Hyjal's attunement's a bit different. It was basically you had to kill Varsh and Kael, and that's it. And So let's get to BT here. So BT, you start up in the sewers. So if you guys remember the sewers back from back from Warcraft 3, you know how the mission we had to go to the sewers and stuff like that, and basically the others would salt the main gate. So basically we're gonna go through a bit of a trip down memory lane. So this is like the sewers, I don't know, colorized, I guess. So pretty much in these areas you had to basically pull these mobs one at a time, with these Aquarius warlords as well, just being pulled by themselves. You also have to pull these Aquarius spawns as well, because these Aquarius spawns could sneak up on you and could spell a raid wipe. They were similar to lava spawns in MC, except they obviously did divide. They just did an AoE slime bolt volley, which could definitely kill people very quickly. So this pull was notably one of the harder pulls in the instance, because you have to CC all these guys, and I believe it was the generals that could break CC. You had to CC everything and then bring them down here and kill them, because one of the ads abilities had the ability to break CC. So you wanted to CC everything up here and have everyone else go down here and kill the mobs, because if this mob, if it was a Sea Caller actually, if the Sea Caller was in line of sight on any of these mobs that were CC'd, they would immediately make them immune to CC and break CC immediately. So you needed to get cutting them all down, and also not to mention that all these I think the Susei could not be CC'd. So what you did here is you basically cleared this entire hall, because you needed this entire hall for Nergentis. So Nergentis is the first boss. Nergentis is pretty simple, fairly simple. You can also, of course, So you can just kill these guys pretty easily. Nagentis is pretty easy as well. Nagentis was the first boss fight where you need an object to throw back at Nagentis, which was his spike. So what would happen is that basically a spike would randomly come out and impale a raid member. A person would pick it up, and what you do, you have your spike, like you loot the spike and then put it to a keybind. And then essentially, when he has the bubble shield, you top everyone up and then immediately use the spike to basically pierce the shield. And any additional spikes did additional damage to the boss, but didn't put a debuff to the boss. So basically what you did is you just use it to break the shield, and that's it. And that was pretty much the fight, basically random raid damage you had to spread out for. Like he had a mini spike which damaged people around you. And essentially what you did was just, you take out the big spike. When the big spike gets thrown out, you take it out. When the shield goes up, you take out the shield. So one of these areas was this area here was one of the most trash farms, because you could see the Taskmaster. And if you guys don't know, this is the only instance where the epic gems dropped. Like, you could actually farm the epic gems. Like, in Hyjal you could, but then they hotfixed it that the first wave does not drop any loot, because people were abusing it over and over again, because the first wave was always ghouls. So they, deliberately wiped to go back to the first wave to loot over and over again. So you had to clear out a big portion of this room. At one point in expansion, you only had to clear out the right side of the room, because Supremacist was very, very easy to kite. Like, you could kite Supremacist down this way, then re-tank him down here, and you would basically kill Supremacist very quickly. So Supremacist was like a patchwork on steroids, then turned into a kite fight. So eventually Supremacist would switch phases and turn into a fight where you basically kite him around the instance, the area. That's why you need to clear all the trash out. And it became a tank and spank once again, where you had to have two separate tanks whose HP you kept at the full at all times, otherwise it would hateful strike someone else. And then you also had the main tank as well, who just tanked the boss. So pretty much he had like chain hateful strikes, and you had to like basically make sure that he didn't, make sure he didn't hit any DPS with the hateful strikes. So if a DPS got hit with a hateful strike, it's pretty much death. So normally through here, what you do is you don't go through at all. What you did usually, you go back to the start, and there's a spirit that can teleport you to the next boss. And you often did that because the dealing of that trash pack back there was very, very difficult back in the day, because there's a lot of demons that could not be CC'd, and also you could have accidentally pulled these demons as well, and you can accidentally also pull a pack. And these cleavers were really, really annoying to deal with compared to just teleporting up here. I'll show you where you would teleport. So basically, you would teleport to around about here. I'll show you guys in a second, because normally you just rush to Shade of a Karma. But what you did is basically, you teleport around here. So basically, you run back, you teleport to these guys right here, and these guys would be like, okay, you start here. You basically pull this trash pack here. So that's what my Ascending Darkness, the guild I was in before, Ascending Darkness. We basically started like this, pull it down here. So usually there's a rogue pack around here that you pull. You need to kill the rogue pack. And then you pull this pack here, back down to here. And then you pull that pack and kill it. There's also these mobs here. The Mystic drops a totem, which spawns an elemental. But what you have to do is just banish the elemental and kill the totem. Like, that's pretty much what it is. Like, there's a big element there where you just have to kill the totem. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So here comes the biggest, what caused people to shit their pants if they had their sound on. Because since there was stealthies in this instance, so you need to be aware if you're near a stealthy or not. And a lot of people shit their pants when they saw a Karma, because they hear that, the noise of, I was like, oh, what the fuck's that? And they see this big fucking stealth mob going, oh, what the fuck? And they don't realize it's a Karma. So basically, Shade of a Karma was probably the easiest boss fight in here. So with BT, once you got it tuned, you should be able to get a Karma, Supremacist, and Nagentis down fairly easily. Like, they weren't the hardest fights. Like, they were the easy fights, and you got easy loot from these bosses. So with a Karma, what you did usually is that, see the defender here? You would have a tank add a Karma, 20 off to the defenders, and you would have two groups, left and right side. And left and right side would basically deal the adds, and then you had one team killing all the sorcerers and stuff like that to ensure that a Karma got to the boss. So what happens is that once a Karma got to the boss, the adds from both sides would stop spawning, and you had to focus on Shade of a Karma. Shade of a Karma may seem hard, but over time, a Karma puts a poisoning dot on him that makes you do more damage to him. So basically what you did was that you used Lust towards the end of the fight, like keep recycling Lust groups over and over again to make sure you get the high damage point when the damage poison stacked up. So next part we're going to go to is Taren Gorefiend. Now Taren Gorefiend was the first cock block of this instance, and he had a unique little mini game which turned into a Java game as well, which basically some guild put on their website, where essentially what you had to do, you had to freeze them in place. If you were good enough, you could do the AoE volley, then freeze them in place. And then you had to lance them all one by one by one. So basically what you did is do one lance, 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 and then you finish off the third lance, and then pretty much what you did was just keep lancing them until they were dead. So the reason why you want to get the lances up right away is because the lance would slow them by 30%, and you could not let the constructs go onto the raid. If the constructs went onto the raid, it would apply a 20%, I think it would notice a 1% damage increase and 1% damage, 1% healing done less. And if they go into the raid, pretty much like it was very, very hard to, recover from it, because a lot of people would get like in every second, they'd get a 1 extra damage dealt to them at the same time, 1% healing less. And what would happen is that Incinerate, the thing that Taren Gorfing does, you have to dispel almost immediately, it would one-shot people. And if any of them had Shadows of Death, you would instantly have constructs in the raid. And it basically dominoes into essentially a wipe. And that's the reason why you couldn't have constructs in the raid, and also they did a decent amount of damage to Clothies. And they could straight away, kill Clothies pretty quickly. Basically, if you fucked up your ghost phase, you essentially led to a wipe unless someone was able to cover for you. Like, potentially, the last person who had about 10 seconds left on his ghost, and he's fine, he's killed all the ghosts, and he could back you up and help you out with the lances. And generally that's what happened, essentially, is that what would happen is that you go to the corner of a room here, you drop your Shadows of Death, you die, you spawn up, or you can even drop here as well. You spawn up, you frost over, then you go back here, 1, 2, 1, 2, then you go 1, 2, 1, 2, then you go 1, 2, 1, 2. And basically just kind of backwards like this, keep doing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, over and over again until they die. And the main reason why you needed to keep all their debuffs up, because the debuff only lasted 10 seconds, so you need to make sure the slow debuff was up at all times, and you don't accidentally miss one. Because if you accidentally miss one, they start moving full speed at the raid, and they move pretty quickly. Okay, so that was the first cock block. Once you handled a few Shadows of Death, normally what you'd do, you would Soulstone and rebirth the person who died to Shadows of Death, and then go on with the fight, essentially. Like, of course, after they had done with Shadows of Death, obviously. And that was the main mechanic of Taren Gorfeed, as you can see here. That was the main mechanic of Taren Gorfeed, was Shadows of Death. Like, everything else, like, the only thing that was any decent as well was Incinerate. Like, Incinerate, you had to dispel immediately. It did a lot of fire damage back in the day. All these Doom Blossoms, I can tell you now, they probably didn't do much damage at all. Towards the end of the fight, it got a lot harder as more Doom Blossoms formed, but they hardly did any damage. But you just need to make sure everyone was topped, just in case they get a Doom Blossom Incinerate combo, which would instantly kill them. And as you see here, basically what you did was this basically Spirit Lance to slow them down, and basically Spirit Chains at the start. Basically, you had 5 seconds to get them all at least one stack, and then essentially you just keep Spirit Lancing them all until they die. If you're good enough, you could do that immediately, then chains them afterwards, and then basically lance them as well. This would make your chain a lot quicker, as you can see here, as it does a lot more damage, and makes it a lot easier. Spirit Strike, well, you only did that in an instance where your mobs are all done, everyone else's mobs is all done, and you just place that on the boss so Incinerate doesn't do that much damage. And that's essentially what he did it for. Also, as I said before, guys, the stealth mobs I was talking about was these guys, and they can make, that's why Akama made so many people shit their pants, because of that. So next up, we're going to go to another cock block, being Reliquary of Souls, and go to Bloodball. So these were the 3 harder bosses before you got up into, well, Mother Shiraz and Illidan Council were just as hard as well. But, basically these trash back here, I remember these guys, the Blade Furies here, the Blade, what are they called, Blade Fury? They would likely cleave train to raid. So pretty much if they started cleaving and running at you, you just basically move away from them. And the Shield Disciple and the Blood Prophets, like you kill the Blood Prophets first because they could heal up, and then you kill the Blade Furies second. So this one was a bit of a gauntlet. So what you had to do, you had to turn on Detect Invisibility, because you needed to see these Angered Soul Fragments and where they were, so you could DPS them before they explode. So what you did essentially is when you brought all the guys to like certain areas where the Angered Soul Fragments wouldn't spawn. So I think the first point was here. So the first point was here, you brought them all. Then what you did down here is you cross along here to this little area here and kill them all here. If you want to know, the moment you went onto this ramp, you would start the encounter. So that's why you want to put it all to here, so none of the mobs would spawn. The angered one spawns here, so you would basically not aggress anything, and then all at once, you'd go on the ramp, okay? This is when you're level 70. When you're level 120, you literally have to be on the center of the arena for the boss fight to start. So, you know, obviously with this boss fight, it had 3 phases. The first phase was basically, it didn't matter if you were a tank or not. It was actually beneficial to have a Disc Priest in the raid on this phase. It's because the Disc Priest could shield a player, and it doesn't count as healing. Okay? So the shielded player could get it. And what you had to do there is that you had to just go into melee range, and the person who on the exact center of melee range of the boss would get aggro for a couple of seconds, and basically he'd just, you know, sit there while everyone DPSs the boss down. And you have no defense, no block, no dodge, no healing, and essentially just everyone just steps in, takes their damage, goes out, steps in, takes their damage, and goes out. He also had a debuff as well. I believe it was Soul Drain. You just have to spell it, that's it. You know, it's nothing too much, and that's it. And that's pretty much the fight. And there's also Frenzy as well. And essentially what you did is just use the cooldown, keep yourself alive. And you see here, basically, no healing done whatsoever. So each phase, you get enslaved souls, and they restore your mana and HP. So next one was the Essence of Desire, and the DPS part for this phase, where DPS could kill themselves as well. So essentially there's a debuff called Denim, and this really reinforced that you had to have a warrior tank for this, because Denim could be spell reflected back in the boss and increase the boss's damage dealt to himself by 60%. Now during this phase as well, Desire has a debuff, which basically means that everyone loses mana gradually during the phase, and healing is 200% as much, and damage is reflected back to the DPS. So fire mages died a lot in this phase because they would pyroblast, do like half the health and damage, and get a nasty ignite tick, and pretty much essentially almost die. With anger, so basically anger at the start, you could do a little cheese strat where you could have one tank taunt and the other tank taunt back and generate Sieve on the other tank, so he'll get more fret. And the other one is for this phase. This phase is a really, really big DPS check. Also as well, during phase, you have to spell Steel Rune Shield, so you can be interrupted as well. Because Spirit Shock, what would happen is Spirit Shock would cast, you need a Curse of Tongues there, and you can interrupt Spirit Shock, so the tank wouldn't get, you know, disposed. So next one is Essence of Anger. So basically this is the DPS check of the fight, where he has a pulsing AoE that increases by double over time. And he has another thing called Spite, where you had to literally, I think it was bop. No, it wasn't bop. Basically, at the end of the 6 seconds, they would get dealt a lot of damage, and you had to make sure they're topped up almost immediately and got back into the center of the area. And lastly, but not least, is Aura of Anger. As you can see there, increases effect over time, deals shadow damage. It basically doubled over time. And essentially, this is when you pop your lust and stuff like that to just basically pump the boss and kill it as soon as you can, because at certain points it'll become too much for the healers and it'll just basically be on set. Fortunately, you know, you get all your mana back from the previous phase. It's Desire wore off. Desire is basically a healer check as well, where at the last point when you have 1 mana, basically only thing they can cast is a priest with inner focus, which makes nothing cost any mana. Like, you know, there's no mana cost. So next up we're going to get to Gurtog Bloodboil. And Bloodboil, as you may know him from Warlords of Draenor, this is where his first little thing came from. So down here there's these gladiators here as well. And with the behemoths as well, behemoths do emulate his fight somewhat. They do grow big and powerful, and they have the charge as well. But there's also another little mechanic with Gurtog called Bloodboil. So what would happen is, I'll kill these guys here because you definitely need this area for the strategy. So what would happen here is, generally what they did is they had the tanks against the wall, because they did a knockback as well. So they had the tanks against the wall here. They had the raid here. So you know what, I'll just give it a bit of a marker here, so you guys can see. Oh, it's not letting me mark here. That is extremely odd. Okay. So essentially what you had the tank against here, you had your raid against here, and or raid around about here. And you had basically groups, like group 3, 4, and 5. And what would group 3 and 5 do is, like, 3 would go out, take 5 blood boils, go back in. Group 4 would go out, take 5 blood boils, go back in. Group 5 would go out, take 5 blood boils, and go back in. And basically every group would have 5 stacks of blood boil. Then group 3s would reset, and then group 3 does the same thing. And eventually over time, what Gurtog does, he enrages and stops doing blood boil and focuses on one player. The player would go to where the tanks would be here, and basically either DPS the boss, out healers damage to allow all the other healers DPS the boss, or basically tank the boss. So the best one it was to get was definitely a rogue, or someone like they could pop evasion and tank the boss, because they didn't require much healing, which allowed more DPS time for them. And the worst person to get it was the mages, because the mages had no armor and Gurtog would hit like a truck on them. And what the mages had to do, they had to use frost armor and just hope they didn't get killed, okay? Like, they just had to DPS on the boss and just hope they didn't get killed. And that was pretty much Gurtog Bloodboil as we go kill him now. And that was pretty much the fight with Gurtog. Like, the biggest hard part with Gurtog Bloodboil is the HPS check. It's not really a DPS check, it's the HPS check. And also at the same time was obviously making sure that Bloodboil groups didn't die, which was the HPS check, and making sure the mechanics were done properly. You had good RNG where you got the good DPS classes you want, like rogues and stuff, and warriors as well, because warriors can put on the sword and board as they can switch weapons during combat. This is back in the day where, Fury warriors and Arms warriors could pretty much switch to defensive stance and be a pseudo tank for a bit and survive for a bit longer. But yeah, that's pretty much that boss fight. And Gurtog Bloodboil was probably like, once you got a good chain, once you didn't get any mages or anything like that, you pretty much had the boss dead. And, once you had that boss dead, you could go to Mother Shiraz generally, or you had Relic of His Souls left over, which you had to kill. So welcome to Denim Water to Light. So basically, after you kill Gurtog, Reliquary, Terrangorfeet, and Shade, you will unlock this area. There's a lot of mobs here which are all to do with love base and, to flirt with you and stuff like that. And essentially what you did is just obviously kill them. There's also one mob here called the Sister of Pleasure and Pain, which essentially linked with each other. So basically they linked with each other and you had to kill them together. What other trash mobs in here as well? All the other trash mobs just did random casts that you killed, even the Courtesians and Concubines as well. They even did a Seduce because they're succubuses. They reveal that to you. And essentially, there was nothing special about these trash mobs. If you guys want to know here as well, you can actually see the rest of the temple from this area. As you guys can see here, you can see the rest of the area and you can see downstairs as well. So yeah, some people also, there's a lot of RP that's done in here as well, like a lot of memes, harem and stuff like that, all done in here. Not sure why. And this is the known hallway to Mother Shiraz. So you have to clear this entire area. The main reason we have to clean this entire area is because of Fatal Attraction, one of Mother Shiraz's abilities. So Mother Shiraz has multiple abilities. There's one Saber Lash where the tanks are stacked together. And there's Fatal Attraction where you get teleported around the room. And you basically have to split apart from each other. It's like Raiden's beams at the moment. Where this is where the mechanic came from. And you had to do it quickly. Because if you didn't do it quickly, you'd essentially wipe the raid. Because everyone else would die instead. And anyone in Fatal Lash as well. It wasn't just... it wasn't with Fatal Attraction. It wasn't just the people who were splitting up that got damaged. It was everyone else within range. So if you had a bad Fatal Attraction, they got teleported inside a raid. You had to, the entire group had to move up so they didn't die. Also, there was beams as well. These beams used to give debuffs or, increases. They changed it to all shadow damage, but it used to be different sort of debuffs. Like Wicked Beam, Burns Mana. That one used to just do a chain shadow beam. This one's just a chain lightning as well. And, the beams used to actually do something different from time to time. But now they're all damage beams instead, these vile, sinister, and sinful beams. There's nothing else special to them. They still get the old Wicked Beam, which burns mana. Also, as well, what happens is that you can't stack up in melee because she would silence you. So you actually had to stack a range stack and a melee stack at the same time. And I'm very sure she had shields as well, where she changed to different shields, where she took more damage from certain mechanics, but it seems like it's been removed. But that's what Mother Shiraz had. I'm not thinking of Chromagus, because I know Chromagus had shields, but I think she had shields as well. I think Mother Shiraz also had shields, but she was overall a very, very easy boss. Once you managed Saber Lash, once you had the tanks be able to survive Saber Lash, because Saber Lash did a fuck ton of damage, and Fatal Attraction was handled well as well. As you see here, 424k damage up to 3 enemies, and tanks only have 200 to 300k back in the old days, and healing didn't used to heal that much either. So it's you could have died as well. These trash here were very, very well known for one-shotting people. If you didn't have a Disc Priest to shield the person who was getting hit by number 10 of their laser beam, they would die instantly. They wouldn't live. And yeah, that's pretty much it with the Promenade Sentinels. You had to put a trash all here, which is unfortunate. But it's going to the next boss, which is going to be Illidan Council, and the last boss before you are not prepared. After you kill all these guys here, you actually don't have to kill these Sentinels. You can go into the Super Bowl of not standing into things, okay? So basically, back in the old days, we used to have this website called Boss Killers, and Boss Killers basically told you all the mob's abilities. And the well-known meme about this boss was that this was the Super Bowl of don't stand in shit. So I'll go through the abilities here, just to give you an idea of why you don't stand in shit. So basically this guy was the first person to introduce Blessing of Spell Warding, and it's where Paladins all wanted Blessing of Spell Warding, because he basically did that to his party members. Basically he handed out either Bop or Spell Warding. And whatever happens is that if he handed a Spell Warding to Lady Meland, the caster had to DPS something else. If he handed a Bop to Lady Meland, which is the healer, by the way, and that's often his most, general target, because you generally DPS her and a range to DPS him, because they all split health as well. The other one is Devotion Aura, which reduces all damage by 75%, which means you cannot have anyone within this guy. Okay, he has to be by himself, otherwise you can't damage the rest. So basically what you had was you had Lady Meland, where ordinarily were pumping their damage into, away from Gathios to shatter up. So Gathios also had a Consecration, where he pumped it down, and this is where you don't stand in it. Also has Hodge as well, which you just dispel quickly. And he also had different judgments. He had Judgment of Blood and Judgment of Command, okay? Judgment of Command hurt a lot when it was judged, but Judgment of Blood was basically a dot over time. So next one's the Vera's Dark Shadow, which all he does is just disappear and envenom. That's literally all it does. Like when he's visible, you can cleave him down, but he just vanishes and he just envenoms and vanishes. That's pretty much what he does. This one is the main one where he drops all this shit, okay? He drops an Arcane Bolt, which he targets the mage with. This is another boss where a mage has to tank it. Like a mage is Spell Steal, because he has a debuff called Dampened Magic, which is Spell Stealable. And that, basically, you're healed 50% less, but you take 75% less damage from his bolts. And these used to one-shot people, okay? Like these used to hurt a lot. And then he has Arcane Explosion if you get in close to him as well, and he sprays you around. That's why tanks can't normally tank him, is they'll get Arcane Explosion, so a mage would tank him with Spell Steal. So pretty much mage with Spell Steal, and just basically pump fireballs, and stuff like that into him as well. And basically he would also throw Flame Strikes and Blizzards around the room, and he essentially just did not want to stand in those. Now Lady Meland, which was basically one you DPS and Empowered Smite, Divine Wrath, which you needed to interrupt. You needed to interrupt Smite, and also you needed to interrupt Circle of Healing, okay? So Circle of Healing was the main one that you had to interrupt, which basically healed everyone 25%. And generally, sometimes you can also cast Reflective Shield as well, so you need a DPS Reflective Shield and immediately kick her to get rid of her debuff. But as you can see here, it's the Super Bowl not standing in things, where there's 3 mechanics that tell you, yeah, if you stand in this, you die, basically. So anyways, we'll kill them one shot, and we'll get to Illidan. So Illidan pops up, and Karma's blah blah blah, souls blah, blah blah blah, this hall's temple's defiled, let's undefile it. So if you guys realize in Karma was a Xerac here as well, and he used to be a person in this temple who served the temple. In fact, you encounter that in Warlords of Draenor, where he's already an Exarch. You encounter Karma in his true Draenei form. Not a broken form like he is now. He's still a shaman assassin dude, but you encounter him as he was. So basically, you get to meet up with all the shaman friends, the spirits that he used to have, Adula and stuff like that. He can't break Illidan's lock by himself. He's like, no, may I come in, may I? And he can't break it by himself. And he's like, I can't do this alone. And basically, he has his old mates that you've met before come and help him out as well. So you see here, Idolo, he's dead in Alcatraz. I think Olam's dead in Alcatraz. And Adulu is dead, I believe. No, I think Idolo is dead in Alcatraz. And Olam is dead in, I think it's SSC. If he does die in SSC, he gives you the letter to tell what Karma, but he dies giving it to you. So yeah, so basically what happens is that you break the lock to go to the final boss of the instance, which is Illidan Stormrage. And you guys may have played this fight in Legion. If you guys played Legion, you may have played this fight as well as part of Illidan's backstory, where you play as Illidan to kill the raid. But, this time in BC, we're playing as the raid to kill Illidan. And Illidan was an interesting sort of fight. He had a lot of mechanics for a boss. So first phase, basically, you needed a tank that had a block. If this attack wasn't blocked, essentially, you would lose 60% of your health, okay? Let's just put it that way, okay? Next one was Draw Soul. Basically, you had to face away from the raid. If this basically faced the raid, he would heal himself back up to full. Can't let Draw Soul with the raid, so basically the tank had to face him away from the raid. Then you had Flame Crash, where you just crash the ground and the tank would just have to move him back like this. Generally, you had the tank here. So basically, it would be sheer, Flame Crash, move back, Flame Crash, move back, Flame Crash, move back, until we went to 60%. Then you had the parasitic shadow feed, where basically the player would run out, or we run away from the player, and then the shadow feed would pop out, and you had to kill the shadow feed before he hopped into his another target. So basically, rage to take care of it. Now, next one is basically spawns 2 flames of Asinov, and you have to keep them within their glaives and kill them at the same time. And then at the same time, Illidan will be above you, and then he'll use I-beam, or dark barrage as they call it, but I-beam, where he I-beams across the room. And he does a lot of damage when he does that. You have to dodge it all together. He throws fireballs as well, which cleave targets as well, so you couldn't actually all be stacked in this little circle where the black glaives spawn. You had to be like, to the left or right and stuff like that. And also the flames charge as well, so you couldn't be too far back. Because if you're too far back, you'll trigger them to enrage, and if they enraged, it's basically what? You can't de-enrage them, basically. And as you can see, the fireballs are firing out, so you have to keep 10 yards away. So then the next fight was phase 3, where he would basically do the same stuff in phase 1 and agonizing flames at the same time. And then basically, essentially what he would do, go to demon form. And demon form, you would need a warlock to tank it with Searing Pain, with shadow resist, and that's pretty much it. With phase 2, you needed 2 tanks with fire resist to tank the flames, otherwise the tanks would just melt because they did a lot of fiery damage. So when he turns into demon, he basically summons shadow demons, which are paralyzed. Like the players that are focusing are paralyzed, and everyone has to focus on to kill them. If the shadow demons make it to their target, they die instantly. At the same time, there'll be shadow blast in the warlock tank. The warlock tank had to be by himself, so he didn't cleave the blast, and really couldn't DPS. Like you couldn't DPS Illidan because you have Aura of Dread, which basically increases the shadow damage you take and deals shadow damage to you and kills you pretty quick. Then afterwards, what would happen is that Maiev would come, like he would shadow prison you, and Maiev would come. And then basically what added mechanic was added to the fight in phase 4 was that he would go berserk and you had to drop him in a trap. So basically, she would set up a little trap, a little grey trap, like around the room, and you would have to kite Illidan into it when he enraged. Like when he goes berserk, you kite Illidan into it, and then he takes a bit of extra damage. You just do that until he's dead. And of course, you can't do that when he's in demon form. Like, it's demon form as per normal. It's basically phase 3, but when he berserks, you just put him in. Anyways, let's just check this out. Oh, we got a Warglaive. Well, that's the first Warglaive I've got in quite a while. I'm wondering which Warglaive it is, actually. Is it the offhand or the main hand? It's the main hand. I've got the offhand on another tune. But, that's one. So basically, if you want to get the set, you have to get the set elsewhere. You have to get the actual set and then unlock it by doing BT time walking. Anyways, just gonna brag about in guild that I got a Warglaive. And yeah, that's pretty much Black Temple, guys. And, if you guys got any little highlights back in the day of Black Temple, please tell me. I went through 2 guilds here. I think Setting Darkness died in Black Temple. And then we had Band back in the old days who did Black Temple. They did Black Temple with me and they did this boss as well. And I remember, I think it was Hania and Lucius were our fire resist tanks. And I think it was Laz or Dirk. No, it was Dirkon who was our main tank. And Laz did it once as well, which I know, if you guys know him, Evan, as I call him, he comes into the runs, not that much, but, he does come and get 15 off me if he needs to. But Laz, he used to tank as well. He used to tank Illidan. I remember him doing the flame crashes, and I remember yelling at him too, because Laz, I can tell you now, he's a bit of a jokester, okay? He's a bit of a jokester. He stood in flame crash one day. I'm like, dude, we're just trying to kill this fucking fight. He's like, he's just being a little, tongue-in-cheek, cheeky of me, because he knows I'll just yell at him. But, that's what we did back in the day as well with, with BC. And I hope you guys enjoyed this trip down memory lane. I hope it triggered some memories with you as well. So, first of all, lastly, what was your favorite boss in BT? Mine was Taren Gorfin, because I love playing that goddamn mini game, okay? Anyways, guys, thank you guys for coming in. Subscribe and like my video, and hope you guys have a wonderful day. See you guys later. Peace out.